Welcome to the Purple Political Breakdown, where my motto is political solutions without political bias. How's it going? And today I'm going to be talking about a recent video that I watched for the Whatever podcast, a podcast that brings on attractive women, that brings up, for the most part, very right leaning men to talk about dating and having a conversation regarding dating for them. It's interesting. I watched the recent video regarding Charlie Kirk, and I plan to watch the video with Michael Knowles as well, two very popular right wing people, like figures, right? Now, I don't really look into Charlie Kirk that much. I've seen things here and there, and I came into it obviously very open minded to see what the conversation is about. Now, I didn't watch the full 7 hours. I'm not going to pretend I did, but I watched a good chunk of it, and there's some points of conversation that I want to entertain. The first thing that I want to entertain is the aspect of the type of conversations you are having. So, this is what I mean. When you have a conversation with people, and the conversation, for the most part, in theory, is meant to progress the dialogue to a specific destination, to maybe even a compromise at the end of the conversation, of course, pushing ideas that will benefit both sides, more so than a debate, an actual conversation. There's two ways you got to have this dialogue. And this is something that I think is very important for people to consider. The first one is understanding certain factual and truthful statements, right? For example, when Charlie was talking about what is a woman, there's always recently, especially for the left, they have these very different definitions. Each person has a different definition. If you identify as a woman, based on social standards, if you do the surgery, a lot of these definitions don't really coincide with each other. They're not even related to each other, and they don't push the conversation forward. If we can't even agree to the facts of the matter, then what are we doing here? I think the conversation starts and stops at the facts. If the facts are not agreed upon, then at that point, the conversation will not move forward. So step one is you have to have a factual basis you both agree upon. A truthful basis you both agree upon. Now, there are general factual and truthful statements that society in general believe is true. The problem is when people know that the exceptions do exist and discount the factual statement, acting like it's not true because it's not 100% the case. The problem with that is, unless it's like numbers, there's no true statements that's 100% truthful all the time. But there's a understanding in society, more particularly, that these types of truths correspond with the current reality that we live in. The truth of the matter is a woman is a biological female. And when a female is born, from what we know, based off our intelligence growing, we observe the behaviors of females, we observe the behaviors of males, they evolve based off society, and those behaviors from those biological functions is what we determine to be woman and man, male and female. But it all starts from a truthful place, and that is biology and how you were born. Now, those are the facts of the matter. We don't have to have a huge debate on it. That is a woman. That is a man. That's fine. Now let's entertain the second part of the conversation, the one that is more interesting, right? Once we get the facts out of the way, the second part of the conversation is where the back and forth truly lies. What about the nuance? What about the emotion? What about the individuality? What about the exceptions? So now we have to find certain values based off the conversation that we're dictating to see how the topic of conversation, what the flow of that topic will go to and what route it will go to. Now I'm going to bring it back to what the Whatever podcast was talking about, the definition of woman. Factually, we all know what it is. Cool. What does that mean in pertinence to the conversation we are having? So this is how it would go. Hey, what is a woman? A woman, biological function, biological female. Okay, second part. In today's society, what does it mean to be a woman? That is a different question, and that is not a factual statement because, in general, even though some people have a factual statement of a woman in the entirety of human history, the different definitions is very important because of the more of like the progressive nature the United States of America has turned into. And now that definition of what is a woman doesn't have nearly as much value because we know you can go into certain communities where they will talk to each other like a trans woman or a drags woman or a guy just wearing some women outfit, they'll call him a woman. That community understand, or that community has a basis on why they're saying what they're saying. It's more cultural, it's more social. This is not a factual discussion. This is a cultural social one. Now, if you want to argue that that way of doing things is wrong, then that's a conversation you can entertain. That is a conversation you can entertain. Is the way you are in this community, especially when it's a peaceful one, is the way you are in the betterment of current society. And we can talk it out. We can have a back and forth. We can have a dialogue. So now you see it's much more nuanced. We're talking about the exceptions. We're talking about intersex, trans. We're talking about personal groups and ideological principles and why they determine a woman is this way. It's a lot more nuanced and it's a lot more effective in a conversation. Facts we know. This community, this like exceptional case right here, your definition of woman is not the factual definition of the woman. So regardless of what you say, it doesn't mean the factual definition. But I'm gonna talk to you and see, okay, your way of being, is it good for society? Is it good for the community? Is it good for you as an individual? There's layers to that conversation, but now it's time to entertain it. So that is something I want to point out, and that's something I noticed, because if Charlie has an understanding of women and all these other people just won't agree to the facts of the matter, then there's no bridge that's going to be built, and it's just going to be right from the start a disagreement. There's no nuance because we won't agree. Another part of conversation I think is important is finding places you can agree. That commonality is so intrinsic in not feeling that you are against an enemy. When you're against an enemy, you think that you need to win the conversation, not only for yourself because of innate pride, but also, especially on the social media landscape, to impress everybody else that is viewing the conversation too. So find a point of agreement. That way you don't deem the person that you are conversing with as an enemy. And that's going to be important because I say this all the time on my podcast. We are more like than you think. And ultimately, I truly do believe the majority of people have good intentions. The problem is we don't agree on what those good intentions are. And that's fine. That is fine, but realize that inherently people are not going to be bad people if given the opportunity. That's important. And the last thing that I want to mention after watching this video is the differences between the young and the old generation, or the young and the older generation, because I got the same type of sentiment after I watched a little bit of Mike Mayak's interview on Valuetainment. And it's more and more noticeable that the young have ways of, or idealistic notions that is only truthful to them because of their lack of experience and their momentary satisfaction. Which is fair, to be honest, especially when you don't have an environment to teach you proper values. So you instill the values based off very emotional and satisfactory feelings of the actions that you're committing, right? So there's two things that I always praise certain communities for. First, let's talk about the LGBTQ. I praise the LGBTQ continuously because they are a group, an ideology that allows people that are not accepted in society to belong somewhere. Now, the LGBTQ is not necessarily a place that accepts everybody. That's dishonest and that's not true. The LGBTQ is a place for outcasts to be accepted to. And there's two completely different things, or those are two completely different things. So LGBTQ, all the people that you can think about back in like high school when they're stereotypical cliques, what about that person that never really belonged anywhere? Those three people that never belonged anywhere, they can fit in the LGBTQ because of how they branded the ideology, which is fair. That's fine. That's why I praise it. People deserve to be somewhere they belong. So, okay, that's one. And the second thing is, when you don't have instilled values and you don't have the nuance and perspective and experience to understand the world, your thinking will be very narrow to what you're doing as long as it satisfies you. Right? My example here is when the young girl was talking about porn and someone asked her a hypothetical question. If I can give you enough money to never do porn, would you stop doing porn? And she said, no, I'd still keep doing porn because I enjoy it. And then they asked her, okay, what if you had kids that were made fun of, that was bullied? What would you think about that? And she said, I don't really care. So the reason why she thinks like this is, one, she doesn't have the proper values that were instilled into her based off how she grew up, which is fine. I don't blame her in particular because she seems to me a person that is very rational despite her values being created on the spot. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm going to keep that in mind. You would imagine someone who created their own values based off their environment to be a worse off person. But even if you do something that I don't deem good for you in the long run, if you're not harming anybody, I'm not going to be mad at you. And maybe the experience that you keep on interacting with people will put you on a better path, or you're an exceptional case of individual where that lifestyle will be fruitful till you die. Either is possible, to be honest, but you're not a scumbag. You're not a terrible person. So there's no negative feelings from me to you. So it's fine, to be honest. It's fine. You can disagree with their way of life, but hating the person, demonizing the person doesn't do anything for them or for you or the conversation. Do you understand what I'm talking about? All right, so we understand that this person is young. The means of environment that put them on this situation is sex. Sex is amazing. Sex is great. You love to have sex. It's very satisfying. It's very freeing. You meet other people that is good vibes that also loves to have sex, and they are in a good community. So it's anecdotal. It's exceptional cases, but it's where you grew, and you grew up in. It's where your values grew, and that makes you happy. So understand that people who have these exceptional lives only think that way is because their positive values were grown in that environment. And that happens. That really does happen. But also realize they're young. They're a bit ignorant about society, and they're a bit ignorant and short-sighted about their future. Even me, I consider myself very intelligent. I am a narcissist. But even I made decisions when I was 18, when I was 20, when I was 21 that weren't fruitful for my future endeavors, even though I plan out everything. But it was still short-sighted to the bigger picture on who I plan to become. So the only way we can really fix that is building a better community to uplift the young. The only way we could fix that is if parents are in their kids' lives and helping them navigate their past. The only way we could fix that is if we're there together and willing to engage in a conversation that pushes each other forward, that healthy competition. So these are things that I noticed in that podcast episode, and these are things that I thought that were interesting to mention. So hopefully you guys got something out of it as well. And yeah, I'm in a suit because I'm recording a podcast episode today. So you have a good one. Make sure you check out the recent podcast episode. Take care and peace.